Found in the after break that cinema is halfway between life and art. A French famous filmmaker, what is name, Jean-Lac Gallard, professor will be knowing it definitely. So it's all about he's telling about the transition between art and life. So I request Professor Sanjay Mukhopadhyay, Professor, Department of Film Studies, Jadavpur University, Kolkata. A round of applause, please. I request the chair for the session, Professor Suranjan Das, Vice Chancellor, Adamas University, Kolkata, to be on the dais, sir, please. Please, sir. Okay, and one more thing, considering the time and other, we are starting at 3:45. We'll finish by 4:05. Thank you. So over to the chair.
Thank you. I don't think I need to introduce Professor Sanjay Mukhopadhyay. He's a distinguished film critic. He was associated with the Film Science Department of Jadavpur University and had pioneered it so long as he was with the department, and even after he's retired, he remains very much a part of the Film Science Department of Jadavpur University. Sanjay, we are very, very fortunate to have you with us. Could I please request you to make your submission? Professor Sanjay Mukhopadhyay, please.
Thank you, Professor Dash, for your generosity. And I really mean generosity because in French parlance, generosity means a different thing other than the ordinary English generous, udarata, etc., etc. Anyway, I also will thank your wisdom. Cinema is perfectly suited in a post-lunch session because it is basically entertainment. And nobody, even 100 years ago, nobody used to take cinema that seriously. You know, Paul Valéry, a great poet, and from a country from which cinema generated, said, how can cinema be an art? It can at best comb the exterior of reality. How can it be an art? After all, you can't expect poetry, drama, for that matter, music and other things to externally focus on the event. When it focuses, it deals with phenomenology, not with the external description. Anyway, we are coming to the world of forgotten heroes and the Indian liberation movement, how cinema was depicted in it. The basic question, where from we start? We can take a cue from a 1953 film, as far as Bengal is concerned. It was named Bhuli Nai, made by Hemen Gupta. Of all other persons, Satyajit Ray was very appreciative of the film, particularly about the role which was played by Vikas Rai in the role of Detective Inspector Mahananda. He said it's the first important departure in the depiction of actuality in Bangla cinema. But I will not start from 1953 because it is post-independence recollection of our memories. And remembering a thing is not always desirable. Perhaps Professor Dash and his colleagues arranged this seminar in order not only to remember, but also to arrange for an active remembrance. It is not only a session to discuss about what happened in the past, like history. It's more a deliberation with the present as a continuation of the past. So, as far as Bangla cinema is concerned, we can start rightly from 1932. In fact, why 32? Because before that, in fact, before 1931, cinema was silent in India. And you have very scanty resources to arrange what really happened. Although the first feature film made by Dada Saheb Phalke in 1913, when Rabindranath was receiving his Nobel Prize, was predominantly political. Now we understand that Raja Harishchandra actually echoed Bal Gangadhar Tilak's Hindu revivalism, and it heavily depended on Tilak's interpretation of the Bhagavad Gita. But we are not dealing with Indian cinema, we are dealing with Bangla cinema in that way. When we enter the sound phase, because during silent era, we have known that we have not any evidence. Only last year, Billa Mangal, a film made by the Madans, was curated and restored, but we are yet to see the film. So we start from 1931, when sound came to Bangla cinema and Hindi cinema as well, to All India cinema. But the first blockbuster film in India was Chandidas, made by Devaki Kumar Bosu, a Congress activist who took part actively in 1921 non-cooperation movement initiated by Gandhiji. What happened in that film? Apparently, it tells the life story of 14th century Vaishnavite poet Chandidas. But if you look at the dialogues, why it became a blockbuster? Because if you decode the dialogues, you would find simple translation of a Congress Working Committee resolution. It deals with a kind of Ashavarna Vivaho, a Brahmin poet in love with a washerwoman called Rami Dhopani. And here everybody knows that Rajakini Prem Bikoshito Hem Kamagandha Nahi Thai. It is devoid of any sexual connotation. Apparently, Chandidas took recourse to a kind of veil, and he was writing actually love poems that during the medieval era he was in dire need of a religious protection, and that is why he used the love rhetorics of Radha and Krishna. In any case, if we look at the film today, you can use YouTube this evening also to see the film. You will see actually it's a film against the caste system. In fact, Gandhiji, when he was back from this second roundtable conference, understood that the English people will always prefer to play the caste cards and the religion cards. On the one hand, you will find Muslims, on the other hand, you will find Borno Hindus, and then there is the depressed caste, etc. He wanted to go for an inclusive politics. He wanted to include the disease and coined a kind of neologism, origin, and other things. And Devaki Kumar Bosu took the cue, made the film. It was a political film. The English failed to understand because they could not understand the essence of the vernacular. It's a very important question. If you go through books like The Imaginary Community by Benedict Anderson and others, you will understand how vernacular can take the shape of a revolutionary manual. In fact, if you look through the two novels written by Rabindranath Tagore, the first Gora in 1988 and the second Ghare Baire in 1916, you will understand there Rabindranath took long spaces to discuss the serious things in Bangla, apparently not accessible by the colonizers. The vernacular is a reserved space for revolution. It has been elaborately discussed by Edward Said in his Orientalism and Frantz Fanon in his Wretched of the Earth. I am not going into that, but in that period, you find two films, apparently love stories, but strictly political in nature. One from Bengal, Devaki Kumar Bosu's Chandidas, 1932, the first blockbuster of India, and you will understand why this film became a blockbuster even in Punjab, even in remote areas like Rajasthan, Rajputana in those days. And the second one in 1936 called Achyut Kanna. It was also made by the Bengalis because it's Himanshu Rai, Devika Rani thing. Himanshu Rai, although he used to spell his surname as R-A-I, he is very much a Rai from Shantiniketan. And Devaki Rani, as you know, is the cousin of Pramotha Chaudhuri. So this couple created Achyut Kanna against the untouchability tradition of in Hindi religion and clearly under the spell of Gandhiji. But very soon you will smell a departure from the Gandhian mode, from the dominant mode of representation. Where did we arrive? We arrived at a space directly in opposition to what mainstream Congress party was preaching. Particularly in Bangla cinema, if you look at the 40s, it was a disastrous period. Our leader, in the true sense of the term, Subhash Bosu, left the country. Then came the 1943 famine. Then came the cruelest riot of the last century, the 45, the Great Calcutta killings, and then partition. Particularly, the community found themselves clueless as to where to land. And for us, particularly in Bengal, not even in Punjab, 15th August 1947 created two situations. One, independence, political independence, and two, partition. Where were we? Was it a moment of pleasure, of awakening, or was it the ultimate moment of pathos and death? We couldn't decide. Till today, when we are speaking, this has remained an enigma with this community, how to celebrate 15th August. The question was first delivered and answered by Ritik Ghatak in his 1962 film, Subarna Rekha, when in the opening shot, we see a huge long shot depicting 26th January. But you will feel awestruck to see 26th January, he is writing as graffiti, Jallianwala Bagh Divas, not Prajatantra Divas. It's an alternative version of history. This is the predominant mode of Bangla representation when you see commoners taking place, the forgotten heroes. Everywhere, when Bangla cinema took up the cause of independence and liberation, they were not much interested in depicting the life stories of our national leaders, like Gandhiji, Jawaharlal Nehru, even Subhash Bose. With Subhash Bose, it's a delicate issue because he left the country in an early age, and after that, showing something is very sensitive. So there were two films on Subhash Bose, and both ended during his mayorship. And other films about other leaders, you won't find any films like Bipin Pal, Deshbandhu Chittaranjan Das. They are part of film. But Bengali producers, distributors, and viewers never got interested in depicting the life stories of so-called national leaders. On the other hand, they got increasingly interested in depicting the life of nobodies, because the nobodies, according to them, created history. We can take two examples from Hemen Gupta's two films, Bhuli Nai, I Did Not Forget, and 42. Both films made after the independence heavily celebrated the moments of revolutionary assault on the police. In fact, when Vikas Rai acted in the role of Mahananda, people abused him like anything. They believed that they have a right. In fact, they are bestowed by divine order to abuse the English system, because the English system really oppressed them, and they were left with no alternative but to take recourse to revolutionary path of movement. Nowhere the Congress path of non-violence was celebrated. Take up the case of Dada Thakur, a film made in 1965. Dada Thakur was an ordinary person, a small town journalist, and a person having a basic skill in oratory. He was celebrated because he could spread the message of defiance and passion among the people in his own way. He was celebrated as a hero. Everywhere you would see that people are celebrating those things which belong to the commoners. Let's say the Satyajit Ray moment. When Satyajit Ray made Charulata in 1964, taking directly from Nostoni, written by Rabindranath Tagore in 1902, he modified the story in such a way as to underline the emancipation of nationalist feelings in the film. It also touched the gender issue. Look at Amol. He was a perfect drawing room politician, editor of Sentinel, which carried the punchline as truth survives, a perfect Englishman, the way Macaulay taught us to be educated. He believed in that we must at present form a class, English only in blood and color, but Indian only in blood and color, but English in moral, in taste, in intellect. Bhupati was like that. He used to make his conversation in English. He used to write communication when serious, because we know in a university, serious things can be discussed only in English, but not in Bangla. Even Bangla cinema are used, are discussed using English rhetorics and English vocabulary. This is another aspect of the story. But what did we see in Charulata? When Amol arrived in this situation, Bhupati's cousin, he was discussing with his elder brother what he was publishing in his journal. So Bhupati said something relating to salt tax, Lord Ripon's movement, Indo-Afghan war, etc., etc. And he said, "Ure Baba, tumi eshob likhcho, sedition hoye jabe na? Oh, dear Lord, you are writing such things. Won't it get seditions?" The first time we learnt about Vernacular Press Act and sedition. Before 1885, the story is located in 1872 in Charulata. And when we look at the intellectual positions of the characters, we see Bhupati, as an educated Indian, is very much concerned with the fact that who would win the election in England as Prime Minister, Disraeli or Gladstone. সে এত দূর উৎসাহিত যে সে পাঠা মানত করে দেয় কালীঘাটে ব্রিটিশ প্রাইম মিনিস্টারের জন্য, ব্রিটিশ উড বি প্রাইম মিনিস্টারের জন্য। Amol represents a kind of generation like Bankim Chandra, who was taught England in English, earned his degree in English, but decided to serve Bangla literature and Bangla culture by copying Emerson, Thoreau and other people. He began to write essays like Amabashar Alu and other things. When Charulata was asked to write, he first thought it was impossible for her to copy her husband because she doesn't know English, and then it was also impossible for her to copy Amol, because Amol writes in such a chaste and metaphor, using chaste metaphors and other things, that it is beyond the capacity of Charulata. She begins to write in her own way. What was her first writing? Amar Gram, my village. A journey with the commoners. And this journey was lacking in the entire 19th century Renaissance period. That has been revealed in Charulata. It is Satyajit Ray critic. Very important, because it is coming from a person who himself belongs to a family which was part of Bengal Renaissance. A grandson of Upendra Kishore Rai Chaudhuri, son of Sukumar Rai. He was criticizing his own family. He was looking at this, the publication business, the approach to worldly affairs and other things, that they could conveniently ignore the inside story of history. And Bangla cinema, you'd find that they use these things as a popular phenomenon. Whenever they created whenever they created such a situation where politics can interfere, where freedom movement can be used, they used commoners. In Dada Thakur, you find two political agitators. They belonged to the group of extremists, terrorist people. Everywhere you see the terrorism, either terrorism or some kind of folk culture were foregrounded. Let us take the example of Ritik Ghatak's Komal Gandhar, a film made in 1961, though rarely seen, but it has a serious implication on the interpretation of freedom movement in Bengal, because in a particular situation in Shantiniketan, we see that the central protagonist was appreciated by a widow, saying that Baba আমার ছেলেও গাইতো, তাকেও একটা মেডেল দিয়েছিল, মুকুন্দ দাসের গান গাইতো, তুমি এই মেডেলটা নাও. It wasn't trying to say that the general trait of national liberation movement was betrayed by the Congress party, and the cause was taken up by ordinary folk poets like Mukunda Das. And this is now the historical task of the communists, to accept the tradition of Mukunda Das and other folk cultures, people, and incorporate it into the mass movement. That is why in Komal Gandhar and in Subarnarekha, along with Meghna Katara, we find so much folk songs from Hemango Bishwas and IPTA people. The left movement in West Bengal thought that it was a kind of historical destiny for the IPTA to take up the legacy of the common folk poets and the not so important poets, the poetic journey or the literary journey undertaken by the commoner, to incorporate it into the communist movement in order to complete the unfinished revolution of India. In Bangla cinema, you would always see this. The commoner's aspiration, the failed aspiration of the people, has been extrapolated to the presence of a kind of terrorists. Even today, it is seen at the presence of the Naxalites, the bearded person who usually questions the mainstream. The established norm of politics is always questioned by the bearded, arrogant young man. What I am what is my basic intention to present here, that in Bengal you won't find, as far as film is concerned, film is a commoner's thing. Film can be understood by all. There is a characteristic of film. If you discuss literature, literature is not for everybody. Even the more popular literature requires a kind of literacy that nobody has come across such a term called cinemacy. Cinema doesn't require any sort of education. Professor Suranjan Das and the beggar on the Barasat crossing, apparently having no literacy, if they are given a scope, if they are coupled to see Pather Pachari, both will be able to submit their impressions. But in case of Hamlet, it will not happen. The beggar won't be able to go through Hamlet because he lacks the knowledge of English literature and English alphabets he doesn't know, and he knows it pretty well. In case of cinema, it's a basic advantage of cinema that they become commoner's Bible. Everybody can understand that. Everybody, to an extent, can comment on that. And whenever we took up the cause of politics, we stood in opposition. Because the moment of celebration of independence is not here uncontested. As I say, this is the moment of pleasure associated with the most pathetic fallacy of the last century, for which, as a community, the Bengalis are suspicious of the outcome of independence. Firstly, because they lacked a leader. For that matter, Shyama Prasad Mukherjee was no leader, or Bidhan Rai. There was no Deshbandhu Chittaranjan Das, there was no Subhash Basu, and there was none. They felt no representation in national level. Till now this has been happening. So they have every reason to submit their dissent. And this dissension comes through a kind of countercultural presence of or an interpretation. This is my submission. I could show you examples from Bhulinai, 42, or say Charan Kavi Mukunda Das, a film made in 1968, from other films also. But unfortunately, I have no clipping. And if you are interested, you can use the YouTube to see these films. And every time you see that Bangla cinema's understanding of political independence is heavily indebted to the alternative version, to the violent version, to the bomb-throwing version of independence movement, to the minority, to Baghajotin and others, not to the Congress tradition or the mainstream parliamentary path. Thank you.
Thank you, Sanjay Da. You rightly elaborated upon the value of cinema as a point of communication, and the fundamental point that you drove is that while portraying nationalism, national consciousness, or national identity, the Bengali cinema laid more emphasis on the common people rather than on the leaders. That was the fundamental point that you drove. I was just wondering, is it different from other vernacular cinemas?
To an extent, because in other areas, we saw, particularly the South, we saw cinema heroes coming as their protagonists, a larger than life heroes, but in Bangla cinema, we did not find that. In Hindi too, I would say that the commoners, the people in general, were not that in tune with the Congress mainstream politics. One among the reasons is that the industry which suffered most because of partition is cinema industry, particularly in Bombay and in Kolkata. The Bombay industry suffered because Lahore and Peshawar and Karachi, the large market, they lost. And a group of people like Devanand, Raj Kapoor and others had to settle in Bombay. They felt basically rootless, and their anger came out from an outsider's agony. Like you consider popular films like Sichar Sabis, Awara, etc. And in Bengal, the same thing happened. Because of the partition, the film industry suffered badly and heavily. So it was basically a wrath against the partition ideology unleashed by the mainstream parties. বলো ভাই বলো ভাই
Hello. My name is Arunopal. I am from SOE department. My question is, sir, to you regarding the Bengali cinema during the political independence. What role did iconic directors like Satyajit Ray and Ritik Ghatak play in depicting the socio-political landscape of Bengal during the quest for independence?
I'd love to.
So, could you take another question?
বলো
Good morning, good afternoon, sir.
Ah.
I am Rishabh Kumar Ram, second year student of history, and my question is, as you were talking about the role of cinema in anti-colonial movement, so how do you see? Do you think that global influences, global political influences, were also playing a major role in shaping Bengali cinema? Thank you, sir.
যেটা বললেন যে চণ্ডীদাস এত বড় ব্লকবাস্টার হলো, তো ডাবিং তো ছিল না, তাহলে রাজপুতানায় বা অন্যত্র এত বিখ্যাত হলো কেন? এক। আর দুই হচ্ছে সের্গেই আইজেনস্টাইনের যেরকম ব্যাটেলশিপ পোটেমকিম একটা ইতিহাসের শুধু একটা মূল্যবান অধ্যায় নয়, দেশের চালচিত্রটাই পাল্টে দিল, সিনেমার শিল্পটাই পাল্টে দিল। বাংলায় তথা ভারতে সেই ধরনের উৎস দ্বারা এলো না কেন? আইকন তো ছিলই, তাহলে কেন হলো না? অভাবটা কিসের?
এক নম্বর সবচেয়ে পরেরটা দিয়ে বলি যে এটা ঠিকই যে চণ্ডীদাস বাংলায় তোলা একটা ছবি, সেটা কি করে রাজস্থানে বা পাঞ্জাবে পপুলার হচ্ছে এই কারণে এটা খুব ইম্পর্ট্যান্ট কোয়েশ্চেন আপনি তুলেছেন, যেটার উত্তর সত্যজিৎ রায় তার জীবনের প্রথম প্রবন্ধে দেওয়ার চেষ্টা করছিলেন 1948-এ। It was written in 1948, at least 7 years before the release of Pather Pachali. What is wrong with Indian films? A small essay published in the Statesman, Kolkata. তো এখানে বক্তব্য যে ইন্ডিয়ান সিনেমা compared to Hollywood cinema or German cinema or French cinema could maneuver sound in a peculiar way. পৃথিবীতে কোনো সিনেমা এত গান পাবেন না, পৃথিবীতে কোনো সিনেমা এত গান পাবেন না। ইট ইজ হেভিলি ল্যাডেন গান, সাংস, এবং মিউজিক যেহেতু নট অনলি কম্প্রাইজ লিরিক্স, ওয়ার্ডস, অলসো সুর, মেলোডিজ। এই বৈষ্ণব কীর্তন মেড দি ফিল্ম পপুলার অল ওভার ইন্ডিয়া। আপনি ভাববেন, ধরুন একই সময় আমি তুলনা দিচ্ছি আরেকটা ফিল্ম Sant Tukaram, made in 1936 in Marathi from Prabhat Studio, Mumbai. Sant Tukaram involved this life story of a Vaishnavite saint called Tukaram. He was in 10th century AD. এটাও অল ইন্ডিয়া পপুলারিটি পায়। কেন বলতো? তুকারামের গানগুলো আমরা মারাঠি বুঝি না, কিন্তু আমরা গান বুঝি। এই যে গান, সিন্স ইন্ডিয়ান ফিল্মস আর laden with music, সত্যজিৎ রায়ের স্ট্রং ক্রিটিসিজম যে এত গান থাকলে একটা ছবি চলে কী করে। আর ইন্ডিয়ান মিউজিকের সিস্টেমটা ঠিক স্ক্রিপ্টের সঙ্গে যায় না। এটা সত্যজিৎ রায়ের অপিনিয়ন যে যেমন বেটোফেন বা মোজার্ট দে আর বেসিক্যালি ড্রামাটিক্স। এই যে আওয়াজ হলো ম্যাসকিউলিন এ সাবজেক্ট, সঙ্গে সঙ্গে এই আওয়াজ হলো এটা ফেমিনাইন বি সাবজেক্ট। দে ক্ল্যাশ টুগেদার টু জেনারেট সিডিই, যেই জন্য ইউরোপিয়ান মিউজিকে কন্ডাক্টর থাকে। বেটোফেন, মোজার্ট, শুবার্ট শুনতে গেলে আপনার কন্ডাক্টর লাগবে, কিন্তু আলী আকবর খান বা আমির খানের কোনো কন্ডাক্টর লাগে না। অ্যাবস্ট্রাক্ট, ইন্ডিয়ান মিউজিক অ্যাবস্ট্রাক্ট হয়ে যেতে পারে। ইমান কল্যাণ আজকে যদি অ্যাডামাস ইউনিভার্সিটিতে এসে ধরুন পণ্ডিত যশরাজ বাজিয়ে যান, তাহলে পরের দিন তিনি ধরা যাক যাদবপুরে ওইটাই বাজাবেন তার মানে নেই, সেখানে একটু ইম্প্রোভাইজ করে নিতে পারেন। কিন্তু বিটোফেন ইউ ক্যানট ইম্প্রোভাইজ দি 5th সিম্ফনি আর দি 9th সিম্ফনি। তো যাই হোক, সেটা অন্য কথা। এটা হচ্ছে পপুলারিটি একটা কারণ। আর সত্যজিৎ রায় ঋত্বিক ঘটক নিয়ে ইউ আস্ক মি, যে for Ritwik Ghatak's case it was more explicit. He came from the tradition of IPTA, he came from the tradition of Communist Party, for which he took protest as his theme. Not only protest in the form of partition legacies, partition নিয়ে যে তিনটে ছবি শুধু তাই নয়, উনি মনে করছিলেন, আমি যেটা সুবর্ণরেখা উদাহরণ দিলাম, যে হাউ টু ট্রিট 26 জানুয়ারি, whether it would constitute the Republic Day or the Jallianwala Day, the great betrayal. উনি ওইটার বক্তব্যে ছিলেন। ওর তিনটে ফিল্ম বা ওর পরবর্তীকালের ফিল্ম যুক্তিতর্ক সব দেখলেই যে 47 সালের স্বাধীনতা। হি গিভ নো credence to the political partition of India. He believes in the continuity of tradition. এমনকি যদি সিরিয়াসলি ফিলোসফিক্যালি দেখেন, তাহলেও কোমল গান্ধার যে বাফার শটটা, যেটা একটা ওয়াইড অ্যাঙ্গেল শট, ট্রেনটা যেতে 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 হঠাৎ পর্দাটা কালো হয়ে যায়, উনি বিশ্বাস করেন যেভাবে ডিভিশন সম্ভব না। তারও কারণ আছে। আপনি যদি আরও একটু ডিপে, মানে ইউনিভার্সিটি বলে বলছি, এটা ঋত্বিক ঘটকের অরিজিনাল থিঙ্কিং না। এটা ঋত্বিক ঘটক took liberal loan from রবীন্দ্রনাথ টেগোর। 1902 সালে রবীন্দ্রনাথ দুটো কাজ করেন। এক নষ্টনীর গল্পটা লেখেন, দ্যাট কেম ইন ফর্ম অফ চারুলতা ইন 1964, সত্যজিৎ রায় ফিল্ম। আর শকুন্তলা নামে একটা প্রবন্ধ লেখেন। এর বিষয়ে ডিটেলস বলতে পারি, কিন্তু ছোটো জিনিস বলছি। উনি মানে বঙ্কিমচন্দ্র 1880s একটা প্রবন্ধ লিখেছেন, শকুন্তলা, মিরান্দা এবং দেশদিবনা। তাতে বঙ্কিমচন্দ্র, এটা উইমেন স্টাডিজ খুব ইম্পর্টেন্ট প্রবন্ধ হবে আজকাল, যে ইনোসেন্স ব্যাপারটা করতে গিয়ে উনি বলেন দেশজীবনা কনস্টিটিউটেড দি সুপ্রিম ফর্ম অফ ইনোসেন্স। অ্যাজ অ্যান আর্লি মডার্নিস্ট হি রোড দ্যাট ইন 1880s. রবীন্দ্রনাথ had a different notion of it. He never named বঙ্কিমচন্দ্র, কিন্তু হি পাবলিশড অ্যান এসে নেম শকুন্তলা। সেখানে অন আদার থিংস, আমরা সেগুলো আলোচনা করছি না, যে উনি বঙ্কিমচন্দ্রের বিরুদ্ধে আপত্তি জানিয়ে বলেন শকুন্তলা। কেন উনি বলেন? উনি বলেন লেট আস কম্পেয়ার শকুন্তলা অ্যান্ড মিরান্দা, টেম্পেস্ট অ্যান্ড অভিজ্ঞান শকুন্তলা। টেম্পেস্টের ব্যাপারে উনি বলেন যে এটা টিপিক্যাল অফ ওয়েস্টার্ন সেন্সিবিলিটি, যে আমরা যখন মিরান্দার ইনোসেন্স নিয়ে কথা বলছি, মিরান্দা একটা টিপিক্যালি ওয়াজ লেড টু এ ডেজোলেট সি কোস্ট। ইট ওয়াজ বিকজ অফ অ্যাক্সিডেন্ট, নাহলে হিলক্সেও চলে যেতে পারতো। মিরান্দার চরিত্রের তাতে কোনো তফাৎ হতো না। এবার রবীন্দ্রনাথকে আমি কোট করছি। রবীন্দ্রনাথ মেড এ ভেরি সেমিনাল অ্যান্ড ভেরি ফান্ডামেন্টাল স্টেটমেন্ট, যে ইন ওয়েস্টার্ন, অ্যাকর্ডিং টু ওয়েস্টার্ন সেন্সিবিলিটি, দি এখানে দি স্পেস ইজ ইম্পর্টেন্ট টু দি ন্যারেটিভ, নট টু দি ফরমেশন অফ ক্যারেক্টার। অর্থাৎ নটউইথস্ট্যান্ডিং দি ইম্পর্টেন্স অফ seashore or hillocks, Miranda could remain as innocent as ever. She did not see any male, সুতরাং সে ফার্ডিনান্দের প্রেমে পড়ে, এটসেট্রা এটসেট্রা। আর শকুন্তলা কিন্তু ওয়াজ ডেভেলপড ইন আদার ফ্যাশন। শকুন্তলা প্রথম থেকেই লোক দেখেছে। শকুন্তলা যখন শ্বশুরবাড়ি যাচ্ছে, শকুন্তলার প্রতিগৃহে যাত্রা, তখন এই যে হরিণ শিশুরা তার শাড়ির আঁচল টেনে ধরছে, আমের মুকুল ধরেছে, তারা ঝুলে পড়েছে, তারা কাঁদছে, বা সমস্ত প্রকৃতি বিষণ্ণ, তাতে রবীন্দ্রনাথ দাবি করেন যে ইউ ক্যানট ইমাজিন অ্যান ইন্ডিয়ান ডিভাইড অফ ইন ল্যান্ডস্কেপ। ল্যান্ডস্কেপ ইজ ইকুয়েটেড উইথ ইন্ডিয়ান ক্যারেক্টার। কালিদাস রিকোয়ার্ড ল্যান্ডস্কেপ ইন অর্ডার টু বিল্ড আপ দি ক্যারেক্টার অফ শকুন্তলা। which Shakespeare didn't require. It is Rabindranath's perception of things, not mine, not Ritwik Ghatak. Incidentally, ঋত্বিক ঘটক সেটা বিশ্বাস করতেন। এন্টায়ার কমলগান্ধার দাঁড়িয়ে আছে পার্টিশনটাকে এইভাবে আপোজ করার জন্য, যেটা যে পলিটিক্যাল আইডিয়েশনের ভিত্তিতে এই সাবকন্টেন্টকে ডিভাইড করা হয়েছে, এই পলিটিক্যাল এই কালচার এই সাবকন্টেন্টের নয়। আর সত্যজিৎ রায়ের ক্ষেত্রে অন্য কতগুলো আপত্তি আছে, সেগুলো আমাদের সময় হয়ে গেছে, অন্য বক্তাতে বলবেন, পরে আমরা কথা বলবো। আমি একটু এলোমেলো বললাম, ক্ষমা করবেন।
Thank you, sir, for such an enlightening session. We would have definitely listened to you, provided we have 2 more speakers to go. And I hope the students, you will go back to the YouTube to search for the movies sir has suggested. Thank you so much. Thank you. We have next speaker. Right from the commoner from cinema and independent movement, we move to women revolutionaries. So a revolution cannot triumph without the emancipation of women. The entitled of this session, Women Revolutionaries in Bengal with focus on Barisal in East Bengal. I request the chair, Professor Partho Datta, Professor School of Arts and Aesthetics, Jawaharlal Nehru University, to be on the dais. I request the speaker, Dr. Sarvani Gupta, Professor of Asian Literature and Culture Studies at Netaji Institute for Asian Studies, Kolkata. We welcome you back, ma'am. Considering the time, I request the chair to kindly. It's 4:25. Yes, sir. It's 25. It can be 4:55. Yeah, thank you, sir.
I'll be as fast as I can. Any conference on revolutionaries without referring to the role of women is unimaginable today, yet the task of the researcher to actually find material and map out their role in the 30 years of intermittent revolutionary activities during the first half of the 20th century in colonial Bengal is not an easy task. I must thank Professor Suranjan Das for requesting me to speak on this challenging topic. All researches on women and their public and private roles, especially during this time period, fundamentally suffer from lack of sources, since women hardly ever wrote about themselves and were even less written about, except to posit a stereotypical image for them in the nationalist project. Also, understandably, political extremism during the colonial period was a very sensitive subject, and families often had to deny a revolutionary role to their women, but the women too had to wait for a long time to feel safe enough to recount their stories. Not that the number of women joining was large, and most managed to stay below the official radar. Even in 1920s, when male heroes of our national movement were being branded as terrorists or criminals in the government's who's who criminal list, very few women featured in the official list. A recent list published by the archivist Madhurima Sen, mentioning around 815 women in the War of Freedom in Bengal between 1919 and 1947, is an important document which should be followed up for future resources. For most part, we have to depend on indirect sources rather than official archives to map the role of women revolutionaries through memoirs, autobiographies, and accounts on revolutionary activity. It will be my endeavor to attempt in this paper to find sources of inspiration for women revolutionaries in general, and to look at a particular region in order to study how a place, its leaders, a school, and its curriculum played a role in formulating young minds towards patriotism and revolutionary nationalism. I have in this context focused mainly on accounts of 3 women of Borishal, Shanti Sudha Ghosh, Monikuntala Sen, and Phulorenu Guho, who played an important role in Bengal and India during the national movement, and who claimed their source of inspiration to be the revolutionary and patriotic ambience of their native Borishal in erstwhile East Bengal. An important element which prepared women for revolutionary struggle was education. By the turn of the century, many of the women who discarded the protection of their families and safety of their homes to take a leap of faith into the unknown flames of revolution were literate, and some highly educated. The writings of the revolutionaries from the second decade about themselves, their dreams and aspirations, their urgency for liberation is reflected in women's writings as well. as Durba Ghosh in Gentlemanly Terrorists writes, in writing accounts of themselves and of their movement, the Bengali revolutionary terrorists made themselves into historical subjects whose importance was consolidated by the act of history writing. The new atmosphere created by the spread of education for women and the emergence of women from behind the veil to participate in all aspects of life, even revolution, has been attested to in recent historical accounts. Tirtha Mondol, in her detailed reconstruction of the lives of many women revolutionaries of Bengal, show how many of them were well educated, and many of them also on their way to professional success. It was a tribute to their inner calling for them to give up on their personal hopes and aspirations and exchange it for insecurity and uncertainty. Another source of inspiration for these women was their families. The men and women in their families, as well as the ambience of their homes, schools, neighborhoods, and role models, who played an important part. Majority of the scholars who have written on the revolutionary nationalists have referred to them as belonging to the Bhadralok class, mostly Hindu upper classes and some Brahmos. In fact, one of the main defects of the revolutionary movement has been the fact that they could not form a mass base by including the lower castes or the Muslims. Many of the leading women who joined the Gandhian movement were inspired by their fathers, brothers, husbands whose sacrificing roles they also mirrored as their religious duty. Often the educational institutions like Gokhale, Bethune and others, through their inspiring teachers and seniors, helped many women to join politics and provided a support base through clubs, societies and associations. Sometimes service-oriented women's organizations, which may or may not profess a specific ideology, also helped create bonding for women who were looking for a means to serve the country. One example was Bethune School's alumni in Chhatri Sangho, where Beena Das, Kalpana Dotto and Kamala Dasgupta, separated by a few years, found similar purpose. The most important source of inspiration was, of course, the national movement, which, as Bharati Ray in an article on women's participation points out, women's entry into the public domain, what she calls politicization, was made possible by the freedom struggle. Geraldine Forbes, in her book shows Women of Modern India, shows how women in each phase of the freedom struggle participated while negotiating with the ideology of the time and the leadership. While women's participation in the revolutionary movement in the post-Swadeshi period was necessarily covert and mostly supportive, their very participation was in defiance of their families, who were kept in the dark. However, Joyce Lebra, in her Women Against the Raj, pointed out that though the leaders, dadas, of the secret societies initially made no attempt to induct women or lower castes, gradually with the increase of police surveillance, they realized that women would probably be less apt to attract police attention. From the 1920s, women came out much more open into the non-cooperation movement in Bengal, when revolutionary activities were replaced by peaceful protests. We know from scholars on women in the freedom movement that women's participation got a legitimacy which was ratified by family values and mythological stereotypes of a good woman. In the revolutionary movement, however, they did not have this empathy, and it was their own determination that urged them to train for a long period of indoctrination and allegiance to revolution. The members were made aware of the implication for themselves and for their families. The loss of blood families meant the need for finding nurturing elsewhere. In this background, I want to stress through an example how a man, a region, and a school became a source of inspiration. Madhurima Sen's list shows that 83 out of 815 women in the freedom movement came from Borishal. More importantly, the name Borishal aroused a sense of pride in contemporary Bengalis and a sense of distrust in the British administration in the early years of the 20th century. The ideas and teachings of Oshini Kumar Dotto and Brojomohan School and College, with its band of dedicated teachers, undoubtedly played an important role in the formation of the mind of the revolutionaries, with participation in community service creating the basis of patriotism. That there always has been a link between commitment to the service of community as an expression of patriotism and participating in the country's freedom movement is hardly ever highlighted in history books, though the great thinkers of our country were not unaware of its importance. Sri Aurobindo referred to it in 1909 when he said that the Shamitis, or the associations for social service for helping the poor and the sick, that Shami Vivekananda preached and Oshini Kumar Datta strove to bring into organized existence, were the glory of national life. Bipin Chandra Pal in 1905, in his essay Amader Volunteer Dol in Bhandar, wrote that volunteers engaged in conferences should be converted into regular bodies and employed in work throughout the year on the model of the Borishal students. The very name of Borishal, says Monikuntala Sen, arouses a feeling of respect and spiritual fulfillment. She was herself a student of Brojomohon College. In her autobiography, Shediner Kotha, she writes, just like its natural beauty was nourished by numerous river streams like a mother, the spirit of the people of Borishal were nourished by the careful training of Oshini Datta and the faithful band of teachers of Brojomohon School and College. No one, old or young, was beyond the influence of these people who possessed strength of character and morality which was almost divine. The Brojomohon School was established in his father's name by Oshini Datta in 1884 by donating 35,000 rupees, and he continued for the next 18 years to teach without a salary. From the beginning, he set out to make the school attractive to the students and their guardians through stipends and prizes as well as clubs and associations. Above all, a priority was given to the practical training in social and community service, and great stress was laid on following rules of morality and developing the character. Within a few years, in the official records, one gets to know of the academic brilliance of the school and college, and in fact, Magistrate Bell reported that Borishal may be said to be the Oxford of East Bengal. Besides the pursuit of academic excellence through the accomplished teachers and the very good school library, the students were encouraged to form associations. There were Union Brothers, Oikko Shangho, Purity Brothers, Shuddhi Shangho, Band of Hope, Asha Bahini, Band of Mercy, Koruna Dol, Band of Laborers, Shromik Dol, Debating Society, Sporting Club, Fire Brigade, and most importantly, Little Brothers of the Poor, Doridro Bandhav Dol. The motto of the college was truth, love and purity, and the daily prayer composed by the principal Acharya Jagadish Chandra referred to the importance of community service as the real duty of the students. They were of course also very good in oratory and debating, singing and recitation, and they contributed meaningful articles in the magazine called Chhatra Bandhu. Also, in most of the autobiographies by the different freedom fighters in the later years refer to many of the teachers of the college who were actually chosen by Oshini Datta for all their very good qualities and who accepted to teach in this college at a very low pay. He himself was considered to be an example, and his knowledge of many languages, religious texts of various sects, in fact, Buddhism in late 19th century, when it was actually being discovered in the rest of India, was taught in Brojomohon School. And stories of his advocacy of simple living became legendary in Borishal, and much later Monikuntala Sen recalls that they were always very simply dressed in their white blouse, white sari, and their feet were always bare. She of course refers to his influence on Sneholata Das, who was the principal of the school that she studied in Borishal, which was the district government school, and Oshini Datta was one of the patrons of that school. Sen also refers to Oshini Datta's support for women's rights and education as vital for the improvement of women's position in Borishal. He admitted his brother's wife Shabitri as the first woman student of the college and was also a patron of the Borishal District Girls' School. The social service training that the students received in the school and college prepared them to make sacrifices for their nation in future. The Little Brothers of the Poor, set up in Brojomohon School, was the end product of Borishal Jonosadharan Sabha set up by Oshini Datta for survey work like population census, waterworks, improvements of road and public health, and was also the prototype of the Swadesh Bandhav Samiti set up also by Oshini Datta for the spread of Swadeshi goods and boycott of foreign goods. And their relief work, famine relief work in the latter half of the 1906 through its many centers was hailed by Sister Nivedita as the greatest thing ever done in Bengal. This Swadesh Bandhav Sabha, according to Sumit Sarkar, drew its recruits largely from the staff and students of Brojomohon Institution till all the 175 branches were banned by the British government in 1908. There were two other influences of Borishal which also had a very important impact on the revolutionaries, including the women revolutionaries. One was the activities of the Brahmo Samaj, which enabled Oshini Dotto to create the environment where girls could be educated. And Monikuntala Sen describes how the first student, Shabitri, was made to come in a covered vehicle right up to her classroom, and then she would pull her head covering right over her face and enter her room, which was secluded from sight and hearing of the boy students. Even when the roll call was made, Shabitri would simply make a noise with her bangles and she would be marked present. There was a wooden partition between her and the class, and she would look at the teacher teaching through a hole in the partition. But in the mid-20s, when Shuniti Kumar Chattopadhyay came for inspection, he declared that there would be no such barriers between girls and boy students anymore. Another source of inspiration that all these writers, all these women talk about is Shankar Mott, a religious institution or ashram set up by Pragyananda Saraswati, which was alleged to be the training ground of revolutionaries of the Torun Sangho and had an impact on the students of the school and college. The three women, this is my final section, the three women with affiliations to Borishal and BM College who played an important role in the freedom movement as well as the revolutionary movement, whose memoirs and memories I have used as a launch pad to discuss their sources of inspiration, were Shanti Sudha Ghosh, born 1893, Monikuntala Sen, born 1910-11, and Phulorenu Guho, born 1911. All the women were highly educated and all professed that it was their affiliation to the ambience of Borishal that gave them their commitment to to the nation. Development of nationalism in women in Borishal, at least in the 1920s, was through a fluid amalgamation of two contradictory sources of inspiration, revolutionary terrorism and Gandhian Satyagraha movement through non-violence. Professor Das in the morning also referred to this, and it's very interesting, intriguing, and also very understandable. There were points of similarities, of course, like the lack of religious bias and the formula of inclusiveness that was interpreted by women as legitimacy for their participation. All feminist writers on women's participation in the freedom movement stress this point, which I believe entirely, is that women always made space for themselves no matter what the ideology of the leadership was. So in this case, at least, I think their participation in the Gandhian movement of all these three women, whatever they believed themselves, was because they would want to legitimize their activity. With Gandhian non-cooperation providing a roadmap for women to emerge openly into public politics, the differences laid out regarding strategy in the two movements was blurred in the initial years, at least. There were already two important secret societies in eastern Bengal, the Dhaka Anushilon Samiti's Borishal branch and the Borishal's own Borishal party, set up in 1908 by, again, teachers of the Brojomohon school. Neither of these Shamitis worked in isolation, and they were closely connected to other secret organizations as well. All these three women were highly educated. Shanti Sudha was the first woman Ishan scholar, MA in first class in mathematics, and then teacher at various institutions, Victoria institutions, Hooghly Mohsin College, and Brojomohon College. Monikuntala Sen also passed out from BM College and Calcutta University, and Phulorenu Guho, after her schooling in Gokhel in Kolkata, did her IA and BA from Brojomohon College in Borishal, and then higher studies in the University of Calcutta and PhD in social science in Sorbonne University in France. All three wrote memoirs and autobiographies. Shanti Sudha's memoirs, which she herself sent for publication in Hiralal Dasgupta Shadhinata Sangrame Borishal, Monikuntala Sen's Shediner Kotha, and Phulorenu Guho's Elomelo Mone Elo. Shanti Sudha came into revolutionary movement through her involvement in Torun Sangho of Shotin Sen, despite not being fully convinced about the Hindu overtones, and the call for Hindu-Muslim unity of non-cooperation movement resonated more with her. It was, in her words, the impressive personality of Shotin Sen and the fact that her youngest brother, Satyabroto Ghosh, whom she called Runu, was closely associated with this organization, played an important factor. This association was also closely connected to another educational institution, Bani Peet, which also inspired revolutionary zeal in many of the students. Even when Shanti Shudha came to Calcutta to pursue postgraduate studies and came in close contact with other activists like Kollani Das and her childhood friend Kamala Dasgupta, she was not fully convinced about her revolutionary past, though back in Borishal, she along with her sister Aparajita had helped in covert operations and ancillary work for Torun Sangho. In 1931, she set up the Shakti Bahini, which met at a government school in secret and to read secret materials and to discuss revolutionary news, train the girls in first aid and physical training, use of lathi and daggers as well. Whenever threats of police repression occurred, Shanti Shudha would shift the focus to social service and education of lower caste, as was the tradition in Borishal. With the increase of revolutionary activities in 1930s and police repression, Shanti Shudha shifted to Calcutta as a teacher of Victoria College and used the opportunity to establish networks with other women-led organizations like Dipali Sangho, Chhatri Sangho, etc. A concerted effort was also made at this time to unite the different Shamitis, and though this was, and a revolutionary tract called Biplobi was also brought out, but it was a very short-lived organizations because of the obvious reasons all the leaders used to be regularly arrested. At this time, she refers to a daring dacoity on behalf of the organization by an employee of Grinley's Bank, though he was ultimately arrested too. She herself was arrested from her own and stayed in the presidency jail for 3.5 years, after which, of course, she was exiled for some years and only then returned to Borishal. In the meantime, all the arms that she and her sister had hidden in Borishal House was discovered and confiscated by the government. Towards the end, when she returned to Borishal after her enforced exile, she realized that in Borishal, the movement or the revolutionary movement and the Gandhian movement had actually become very close. And thereafter, she actually still did not accept Gandhi's individual satyagraha. So she kept close to Sarala Rai instead, President of All India Women's Conference, as its secretary, and confined her work to milk and medicine distribution and setting up of the weavers' workshop. Monikuntala Sen recalls, as I mentioned, of her childhood in Borishal, of the severe training that she received in her home, of not spending time in innocent youthful banter, but in meditation and studies in spiritual improvement. In fact, in her home, even all novels were banned, Bengali periodicals, travel stories, even the texts on ancient and medieval lyrical literature, which was compulsory reading for her BA course, was also forbidden. But soon she became less interested in religious studies and more in the writings of revolutionary patriots, and the call for Gandhi's civil disobedience helped her to enter public life. Especially Gandhi's presence in the Bengal Provincial Conference in 1923, where there were a large number of prostitutes very close to the stage in Gandhiji, and where he responded to them as mother and asked them to be included into the national movement, greatly impressed Monikuntala Sen. When she was working in the school set up by Sneholata, she came into contact with Shanti Shudha Ghosh and was toying with the idea of joining Jugantor party when a raid at Shanti Shudha's house brought a setback. Around this time, Monikuntala Sen was also impressed by the communist ideas and began secretly to give lessons to some girls on Marxism. After her graduation, she stayed in a hostel in Calcutta where Phulorenu Guho Ni Dotto also stayed. Instead of Shomendranath Tagore's Revolutionary Communist Party, Sen joins Bimal Pratibha Devi's Mohila Shakti Sangho, where she met several prominent Congress leaders. Discovering that Communist Party, which had been forced underground, had its headquarters in Borishal, Sen convinced her parents to allow her to become a member of the party, and from 1942, she traveled all over the country, reviving her old training and tradition of social service, which she had learnt in Borishal. She became active in relief work during the famine of 1943 and rescue of destitute women of Midnapur. Finally, Phulorenu Guho, born in 1911, second daughter of Surendranath Datta of Batajor, Borishal and Obola Bala, was fortunate in inheriting patriotic genes on either side. Her father, a government pleader, came under the influence of his uncle Oshini Kumar Datta and was later moved to Assam as Bengal had become too hot for him. Phulorenu's maternal grandfather, Boshanto Bose, was a Congress worker and influenced her mind by his simple lifestyle and love for education. Phulorenu, in her memoirs Elomelo Moneelo, refers to her maternal uncle Ajit, whose involvement in secret revolutionary movement gave Phulorenu, or Dolly as she was called, and her sister Jolly, experience in hiding his gun and reaching it safely to the assigned spot, etc. The different schools she studied in were also sources of inspiration. Principal Jyotirmoyi Ganguly, who created awareness among the students of Brahmo Girls School through recounting stories of brave women and organizing a fast on the anniversary of Jallianwala Bagh massacre. Phulorenu's statement in the police files of 1942 denies any involvement in the revolutionary movement, but a close reading of her deposition makes it obvious that her intention was to mislead and confuse her interrogators. In her autobiography, she writes that she was connected to the Jugantar party and her duty was to copy articles, provide shelter to the fugitives, and to supply provisions and arms to different destinations. Many years later, in a gathering of women activists of Alochana, Phulorenu created a sensation when she asked them if they had ever spent nights giving shelter to unknown men. At the shocked reaction, she replied with a smile that she belonged to an extraordinary time when women had freedom, with or without the approval of their families, to join the revolution. Even the old family retainer, Kashi Thakur, was complicit in aiding and abetting the two sisters, Jolly and Dolly, when they returned home late from a secret meeting or party work, and her driver Gaur, who ignored danger and took her everywhere on Jugantar party work. Though she was still in school in Gokhel during the non-cooperation movement, she remembered the excitement when Bashanti Devi, C.R. Das's wife, courted arrest, and post-1922 labor uprising when the first woman doctorate, Prabhavati Dasgupta, pioneered an upsurge in 1927-28. Phulorenu returned to Borishal to do her BA in Brojomohon College and mentions the impact of the school and Shankar Moth for her vision for the future. But considering education her top priority, Phulorenu completed her master's from Calcutta University and went on to do her PhD abroad. It did not dissuade her from politics, as her family had hoped, and she actually kept abreast of Indian news regularly. She was never constrained by any particular strain of politics in her initial years, and fluidly, like other women revolutionaries, moved between revolutionary work and Gandhian movement. She was also attracted to the labor movement, but on her return decided that Gandhi's philosophy of truth was the essence of all isms, and his village reform program appealed to her as the best way to serve humanity. From the beginning to the end, as her Karma Kutir movement, refugee rehabilitation program, as well as commitment to women's empowerment showed for Phulorenu, service to the country was synonymous with serving its people. In conclusion, one may point out that while broad generalizations regarding women in revolutionary movement may have its pitfalls, since every woman's experience of public life is different, it is undeniable that some of the generalizations are intriguing. Tirtha Mondal, who has worked on many revolutionaries, talks about higher educational qualities in these women compared to those in non-violent movements, they being younger in age in schools and colleges compared to the middle-aged housewives in the Gandhian movements who joined with the support of their families who were also active in the movement. She also refers to the negative attitude of the families of the revolutionaries who, after suffering penal servitude, were often disowned by their families. While admitting that the lives and works of the three women I discussed today may have followed different trajectories, it is true, as proved by their own writing, that the initial sources of inspiration of all the three women was a region, inspiring men and women, training in community service, and stress on moral discipline as a stepping stone to the service of the nation. What strikes me when I refer to Borishal and Oshini Datta's educational experiment as giving birth to generations of patriots is that today, if political service prioritized prior training in community service and moral discipline as a prerequisite, then repeated disappointment of the nation in the ability of the politicians could be prevented. Thank you.
So, question at the end. Thank you, ma'am, to sticking. Ma'am is there. Thank you, sir. You can remain seated there, sir. Okay. This is the last session for the day, and thank you, ma'am, sticking on time and saving 3 minutes. We have the last session, and now from cinema to independence movement, we are moving to culinary analysis. This is presented by Dr. Subhashish Haldar, Assistant Professor, Department of History, Panchkuta Mahavidyalaya, Purulia. His paper entitled Feeding the Flames of Revolution, a Culinary Analysis of Bengal's Struggle for Independence. And the chair for this session is Dr. Sarvani Gupta, Professor of Asian Literature and Culture Studies at Netaji Institute for Asian Studies, Kolkata. With your permission, ma'am, we'll start the session. Yeah. Please.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Professor Suranjan Das and Dr. Nisha Thakur, for giving me the opportunity to speak in this occasion. Thank you, ma'am, for chairing this session. I'll not take much time. People have already talked about many things. I mean, the distinguished speakers, they have talked about many things, many aspects of a revolutionary movement. I'll not go into that. Basically, I'll start from not from the revolutionary movement, but little bit earlier, because this, basically I'll talk about food, what people used to eat and without which you can't sustain. So that is the basic thing for every revolution and everything. If you look at the French Revolution, if you look at any revolution, any kind of revolution, food is also an important factor. So I'll look into that. From the mid of the 19th century, if you look at it, the Britishers was talking about that we Indians are very fragile. Precisely, the Bengalis are very fragile. They can't fight. They don't have the power to do certain work and certain like that. The basic martial race theory, and basically destroy the argument of the Britishers, people started walking out, and several units, several more or less institutions, Anusholan Samiti and so on, these has been created to build your body. And from that you can see that Rosalie's work, Mrinalini Sinha, Indira Chaudhuri and so on, many have worked on this. I am not going into that. But from that period, there is two things which are going on. One is the debate, what is the ideal food for the Bengalis, which make the Bengali male more masculine. That is one thing. And regarding that, there is a huge debate among the people that how you make your body more masculine by consuming vegetarian or non-vegetarian dish. There is a huge debate regarding that. I am not going into that. But it is necessary to understand, because from that period, basically late 19th century, these debates has been started. Even if you look at the famous debate between the Chandranath Bosu, the person who have written Hindutva for the first time, and Rabindranath Tagore, Chandranath Bosu was saying that vegetarianism is the best thing for the people who can, I mean, vegetarianism is best thing for the people because it will make you more masculine, and he has written in his book that look at the Muslims and the Bangals, basically the East Bengalis. They are consumers of mutton and the onion and garlic. Because of that, they are basically very quarrelsome people, and you can't deal with them. So if you eat vegetarian dish, it will make you calm and cool. Look at the Irish people; they eat potato. So they are the best people in the world. Rabindranath Tagore had written a response to that, and he responded in a very strong way, and he was saying that look at these Brahmins. These are the people who are the cause of all the problems for the Bengalis. Once they have stopped eating the non-vegetarian dish, they have destroyed the Bengali masculinity. Later on, there are many writings about between Sarala Devi Chaudhurani and Swami Vivekananda, and Vivekananda was saying, I don't have any problem with meat eating because my guru used to have fish, so I don't have any problem. You can eat until and unless you are creating any alternative to the meat, it is okay. Now, that was the situation, that is the background which has been created before this nationalist movement, and now this background has continued. That is why if you look at the memoirs of the revolutionary or the freedom fighters, in their memoirs, food has become a very important factor. If you look at the Troilokanath Chakraborty's Jele 30 Bochor, he has written, I am quoting it in Bengali, জেল তিনটি জিনিসের জন্য বিখ্যাত ছিল, ফাইল, গাইল and ডাইল. What is file, guile and dial? File is basically there is a time bound thing, you have to do everything on time, otherwise you can't do that. Second thing is that guile means you are scolding someone, and the jailers and the people who are basically the security guards, they used to scold people and with different words which I should not use here. The third thing is dial. Dial is basically the lentil soup, and that is a huge thing because that is a huge thing because with that dal, they are fearful about that dal. Let us start with Sri Aurobindo and what he was trying to say about the food in the prison. Let me tell you one thing, is that I am only talking about the prison food, not the outside food. So you may say that prison food is a kind of, you have to eat it because there is no other choice. But we can observe that even in the prison food, the people who are inside the prison, they made certain way, they have found out certain way to eat in their own way, and they have made certain changes in that. Let us first look at the food, what was the condition of food. Acha. Just a minute. Acha. He was talking about the utensils, and that I mean the one which you have to eat. The utensils were like kind of a round thing. You have to hold it, otherwise it will you can't eat on it. That is the basic thing which he was trying to say. Just a minute. Acha. Aurobindo is writing, মানুষের আহার যে এত স্বাদহীন নিঃসার হইতে পারে তাহা আমি আগে জানিতাম না। মোটা ভাত, তাহাতেও খোলা, কঙ্কর, পোকা, চুল, ময়লা ইত্যাদি এত প্রকার মশলা দেওয়া হইতো, স্বাদহীন ডালে জলের ভাগ অধিক, তরকারির মধ্যে ঘাস পাতা, শুষ্ক শাক, এই শাকের বিমৃষ্য গাঢ় কৃষ্ণমূর্তি দেখিয়া ভয় পাইলাম। 2 গ্রাস খাইবার পর তাহাকে ভক্তিপূর্ণ নমস্কার করিয়া বর্জন করিলাম। আচ্ছা, সকল কয়েদিদের ভাগ্যে একই তরকারি জোটে এবং একেবারে কোনো প্রকার তরকারি আরম্ভ হইলে তাহা অনন্তকাল চলিতে থাকে। এই সময় শাকের রাজত্ব ছিল। দিন যায়, পক্ষ যায়, মাস যায়, 2 বেলা শাকের তরকারি, ওই ডাল, ওই ভাত। জিনিসটা বদলানো দূরের কথা, চেহারারও লেশমাত্র পরিবর্তন হয় না। So what he was trying to say is that the monotonous life inside the prison and this type of food, this is not only breaking their health, but it is also breaking their mind, their power to struggle. That the essence is there, what we can see. There is another interesting section we have found in Barin Ghosh's Dipantarer Kotha. Here he has given a clear instruction, clear depiction of what the food was. Now, before entering into the Barin Ghosh, I would like to discuss 2 different things. One is that within this for these prisoners, there is 2 options. One is the official one, where you can eat lopsi. What is lopsi, you may ask? Lopsi is basically a rice which in Bengal we all know it is called fana bhat, basically the rice with the fan, that is the whole thing. This lopsi, and that is the first thing, that is the official one. Or if you have money, you have the unofficial thing. And there is another option, is that if you can steal, you can have that different type of food. So Barin Ghosh was saying that sekale fane bhate ek dabu, mane the 1 spoon of fan and bhat, and kanji, that is another thing which they used to get. But if you can steal, then there is another option. What is the option? Bhandar ba pakshala hoite lobon লঙ্কা, তিতুল এবং 7 নম্বর হইতে নারকেল চুরিয়ে, this 7 number is the 7 prison. It is very near to a coconut tree, so you can take a coconut from the tree. So 7 number হইতে নারকেল চুরি করিয়া চাটনি পেশাতে পারিলে অমন আধকাচা রুটিও স্বর্গীয় সুখ দিত, এরকম একটি বক্তব্য উনি দিচ্ছেন। আচ্ছা, এবং উনি বলছেন যে নারকেলের জল এবং দই এগুলি একসঙ্গে মিশিয়ে খাওয়াটা, চুরি করে এগুলো নিয়ে আসা অ্যান্ড এগুলো একসঙ্গে মিশিয়ে খাওয়াটা স্বধর্মে পরিণত হয়েছিল। সো বেসিক্যালি ইফ ইউ ক্যান স্টিল, ইউ ক্যান হ্যাভ লিটল বিট বেটার ফুড, দ্যাটস হোয়াট দে আর সেইং। নাও দেয়ার ইজ অ্যানাদার অপশন, ইফ ইউ আর intern, or if you are the part of the jail for a very long time, it is also showing from the Barin Ghosh's memoir that if you are part of this jail for a very long time, you may create a connection between the warden and the inmates. What has happened, he was saying that মাঝে মাঝে এক পাঠান ওয়ার্ডার রান্না করিয়া মাংস আনিয়া লুকাইয়া খাওয়াইতেন. So that means there is an option to have meat. And now the problem is I don't know which type of meat, but there was a meat available, it is we can observe. And there is another option, which is basically the old inmates who have served once the coconut and sugar and roti, basically the flat bread. And these things are the delicacies in those days within the prison for them. Acha. Then there is another option for people like Barin Ghosh. What is the option? The option was you can eat on time, or you may eat little bit later. if you wish to eat little bit later, then you have to take permission from the authority. So Barin Ghosh got the permission, and he wrote that জেলের পাকশালা হইতে বাঁধা ভাত ডাল ও লুটি লইতাম. Now interesting factor is that ও বাজার হইতে তরকারি ডিম মাছ কিনিয়া রাঁধিতাম. সরকারি দুধে সরকারি দুধে 4 জনের মানে 12 ounce করে প্রত্যেকের দুধ ছিল, so 48 ounce that they used to get, and from there they can prepare their tea for the 3 times within the jail. দুর্গোৎসব ও বড়দিনে পোলাও লুচি মাংস ইহা ইচ্ছা করিলে আয়োজন করা যাইত. If you can pay, you can bribe, you can eat luchi, mangsho and pulao. In, say, not all the days, in certain days. হেমচন্দ্র ও উপেন নিত্য পেঁয়াজ দিয়া মাছের ঝোল ও পেঁয়াজ সহিত 5 ফোড়ন দিয়া মোচার ঘণ্ট রাঁধিত. রান্নাঘরের আশেপাশে লঙ্কার চারা, পুদিনার চারা ও লাউ কুমড়ো ডগার জন্য লাউ কুমড়ো গাছ লাগানো হয়েছিল. So what was happening is that if you look at these descriptions, you can observe that these people are using onion. Now, you may say that look, the onion and meat they are eating, there is no problem. But the problem is, here you have to understand that these people are getting these food items not from the same caste people, or not from the even not they are eating the things in a proper way. Because if you look at the late 19th century descriptions, you can observe that piyaj, roshun, these are the prohibited things for the upper caste Hindus. And I am talking about all the upper caste Hindus. But they don't have any problem. By then, there is no caste barrier. So that is also giving you a kind of a perception that this, after this movement had started, it might have, I'm not claiming that it has already destroyed all the caste barriers, I'm not claiming that, but it had to some extent break the barrier. That is why they are easily having onion and meat, even by cooking, even the food might be cooked by the other religion person, the person from other religion. So that is also another interesting thing. Acha. Now this is my last this is the last quotation from Upendranath Bandopadhyay in his memoir Kara Jibon. He has also wrote a detailed description of it, of his jail time. He wrote that Muraripukurer বাড়িতে, when they are being captured by the police at Muraripukur, they were saying that on the first day they have to spend their night at the police station. On that day they were very much in agony, because they could only eat the puri, that means the fried bread and the sabji. So that was the thing, and they were talking about that. After that, when they have been produced in court, there was one person who has been detained by the police. He came to the Upendranath and said, "Ki I have not ate anything. They have only gave me some puffed rice, the muri." So they went to the jailer, and the jailer ordered the sepoy to bring food for these people. But after a certain point, after several ordered again and so on, they only get a glass of water. So what has happened? After a certain point, when they are returning to the central jail from the court, their car has been stopped to a shop, and they have been offered to puri and singara. They ate, and then they went to the jail. So that was the thing. There is another very interesting thing which Upendranath Bandopadhyay have mentioned in his autobiography, is that if you wish to eat something which you want to, I mean, if you want to eat something which you can't get within the jail, if you can pay, you will get that. Like he was writing that ভাতের ভেতরে লুকিয়ে কই মাছের ভর্তা ও রুটির গাতার ভেতর হইতে আলু পেঁয়াজের তরকারি, এমনকি পাহারাদারের পাগড়ি হইতে পান ও চুরুট মাঝে মাঝে দেখা দিত. That means if you can pay, you can eat good food. If you can't eat good food. Even one of their inmates' father, when they came and when they came to meet the person, he asked the jailer, what is the food, what food you offer? And then he heard about the lapsi. Then he started crying and saying, look at my son. He used to throw the bowl of pulao when he don't want to eat it. Now he is having lapsi. And he is saying this is the most nutritious food in the world. So in a way, if you look, and there are several such descriptions available in the memoirs. Even in archive, if you look at the Madhurima ma'am's work, she has also mentioned in her book the food, the archival description of the food. That's why I have not entered into the archival description of the food offered, because that is the thing why I have not looked at the archival in a more precise way, because the archive unearthed the thing which government offered. What they have at that we don't know, only we can find in the memoirs. So that is the thing, and that I have tried to understand. And what I have found, there is two, this is my preliminary observation. One is that because of these this description, we can observe that there is a kind of a break in the caste hierarchy. Maybe there is a what can I say, it is not breaking, but it is kind of loosen up the shackle of the caste hierarchy. That is the one thing. And the second thing is that even after entering into the jail where kind of the life ends, there they have found out their new life, new way of living the life. That is the thing which I can say. Thank you.
Rohit, take the mic, please.
Okay, ma'am, I have a question for you. So, ma'am, what are the contributions of women in the Azad Hind Fauj or INA? Like, we all know that there was a Rani Lokhibai regiment. So, is there any narratives or?
That is a completely different experience, of course, but there are a lot of memoirs written by them. There are many stories of them by other, but I didn't bring them in. I have also worked on the Azad Hind Fauj, but I didn't bring them in because I was sticking only to the sources of inspiration of these three women revolutionaries. But that is also a very fascinating part of our freedom struggle, and of course, I hope you will work on it.
Yeah. So who was the next person? Okay, you on this side, yeah, first.
So good afternoon, sir. My question is to Shubhajit sir, and my question is that, sir, you were talking about that during the British rule, certain Indian nationalists, they were coming up with the idea of what diet can make the men more masculine. So my question is that this ideology, was this mostly influenced by the Western ideas of diet that were emerged after the World War and during the Second World War, or was it a result of the reading of ancient scriptures? Thank you, sir.
There is two things was happening during that time, not the Second World War. This debate has happened in the late 19th century. Precisely between 1860s to 90s or 1900, that is the time period more or less. No, even 1910, Chunilal Bose has written a vivid description of that. But the basic thing is that there is two things which was happening. One is that during that period, the idea of nutrition was emerging in the West. So those books, through the medical college procedure, I mean the medical, because the medical system, the allopathy medical system was developing at that time. So through that, that has penetrated the Indian society. That is one thing. Second thing is during that period, several Ayurvedic doctors, they have started publishing their books. Okay, so this idea about the vegetarian and non-vegetarian thing, this idea has, I mean, this debate has different influences, like the Western influences and Indian influences. Both the party have taken their cue from both the areas. It is not like that the people who are supporting vegetarianism, they are only talking about the Indian things and Indian scriptures. No, they are also quoting some Western books where they have talked about that vegetarianism is the ideal thing. Because you have to remember that they have to stay not only in India but in several parts of Africa and several parts of Asia, which were very hot, and they were thinking that these areas were if you eat vegetarian dishes only, then you can be healthy. So that is the thing.
I just have one observation. It's that these people you are talking about, you are quoting from their memoirs. So when they are writing these memoirs, they have a purpose. So when they are the main purpose is to find a position for themselves in history, a position which they actually don't have. I mean, in the wider national movement that Professor Das was talking about, they are a very small minority, and they're trying to make their place through these articles which come out in the popular periodicals and later on become books. So when they are writing, why are they writing about eating? First of all, I mean, it is not the most important part of their activity. They are actually supposed to only talk about their prison sentence and the great sacrifice that they have made by being in prison. But they are being Bengalis, and they want to attract their readers. This is my reading of the situation. They write travel and food. These are the things that interest Bengali readers of periodicals, which is why I think they are writing about the food. And especially Barin Ghosh, the way he has described about getting hold of good food doesn't really reflect very nicely on him. But why are they writing this? The other point that I was thinking is very good point about the liminality that the prison brings, you know, the destroying of caste barriers. That is the most important point, I think. And the other thing is, what about the people who are giving them food? They are on the other side. They are on the side of the British. But as we see, as this lady pointed out about the Azad Hind, so in the minds of the soldiers, ever since the Great Revolt, they also have a patriotic feeling. So are they also being a part of nationalism in this way by providing them food, something that they feel they are being denied? I don't know. These are all the questions that were coming to my mind.
Ma'am, the memoirs I have discussed, or the memoirs I have read so far, I have not completed all the things because I have just started working on that. But interesting thing is that everyone, more or less everyone, in their memoir, in the beginning, in the preface, they were talking about that I'm writing this memoir because such and such person has asked me to write about it, to influence the later generation. How you lived your life, that is the whole thing, that is the whole purpose of it. Yeah, it is definitely, there is a politics behind it. It is like even later on, many of them, I mean, not the people I have quoted, but many of them they have acquired different lifestyle or different type of life. So maybe that is one reason why they have written about it in a very detailed way. There is another thing which is also very interesting, is that if you look at the earlier memoir also, Bengalis always have written in their memoir bits and pieces about their food habit. because maybe it is ingrained in their lifestyle. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it is ingrained in their lifestyle. They sometimes unconsciously they have written about it, not always unconsciously, but sometimes they unconsciously written. Because in if you look at the Barin Ghosh's autobiography, the biography, the book, you can observe that he is not continuously writing about food. He is talking about something, then suddenly he jumped from here to another set of stories, and he was talking about the food. And then he jumped again in the how Britishers were bad, how they have been mistreated, and so on. So that is the first thing. The second question that I really don't know, because I have to look at the archive, because the other side story has not been reflected properly in this biography. I don't know, maybe I have to read more and I can find something, but so far I have not found anything. That is the thing.
I have a small queries. You are talking of the 3 women, they have contributed. But what was the dividend they got, except what about the others? I know, because I'm staying in Dhakuria, where Fulrenugo, I met her. So I was a little boy, so I once went many times in her house. So what are the other 2, whether they got any dividend from the government of India after our independence?
Monikuntala Sen's autobiography doesn't mention that, but she had a very active life in politics. Shanti Sudha didn't. As I said, her memoirs is actually very short, and in that she ends by saying that I am now working with Sarala Rai. And I don't think these women were ever concerned about what they would get, as you know, because Fulrenugo I'm related to her, so I have met her many times, and for her, towards the end of her life, both Karma Kutir and women's empowerment were the big issues. She was very closely connected to the School of Women's Studies in Jadavpur University. In fact, she told me, why are you working in Calcutta University? I was in women's studies in Calcutta University. So they were both very committed, and towards the end of her life, she used to stay in Repose Nursing Home in one tiny room. So I feel that, I don't know, I might be, valorizing them too much, but I think that if I judge the others by her, they did have a higher calling. Yes, they have all had very active, political life. So I don't exactly know what you mean by dividend. Bari gari jodi mean koren, I don't know. I'm
talking of the social status.
Yeah, that they have all achieved. I think they have all achieved. Yes. Yeah.
ম্যাম একটা প্রশ্ন করি, ম্যাম একটা জিনিস বলি। এক হচ্ছে, আমি যে 3 জনের কথা বললেন তার মধ্যে প্রথম আমি ফুলরেনুগুকে দিয়েই শুরু করি। তার সঙ্গে আমার কথা বলার সুযোগ হয়েছিল, আমি যেহেতু 1942-এর আগস্ট আন্দোলনে কাজ করছিলাম। যেটা বলা হয়নি বা যেটা অনেকে জানে না, ফুলরেনুগু ওই সময় আগস্ট আন্দোলনের সময় তার যেহেতু সামাজিক একটা উচ্চবিত্ত স্তরে চলাচল ছিল, সেই সময়কার ক্লাব জীবনে অভ্যস্ত ছিলেন, তথাকথিত উচ্চকোটির মানুষদের থেকে নিয়মিত তিনি অর্থ সংগ্রহ করতেন এই বিপ্লবী আন্দোলনের জন্যে। তিনি আক্ষরিক অর্থেই ওই বিপ্লবীদের যে বিভিন্ন গোষ্ঠী তার একটা লিয়াজো হিসেবে কাজ করছেন। পুলিশ তাকে কখনো সন্দেহ করতো না, কারণ বীরেশ গুহ স্ত্রী এবং তিনি নিজেও স্বনামখ্যাতা। তিনি আক্ষরিক অর্থেই বিভিন্ন ক্লাবে গিয়ে বিশ্বাসী জনদের কাছ থেকে বিপ্লবী আন্দোলনের জন্যে অর্থ সংগ্রহ করতেন। এক। আর মণিকুন্তলা সেন সম্বন্ধে যেটা আমার মনে হয়, এটা আপনারা সবাই জানেন, সেটা হচ্ছে মণিকুন্তলা সেন কিন্তু ব্যক্তিগতভাবে যতটা গান্ধীবাদ দ্বারা আচ্ছন্ন, তার চেয়ে অনেক বেশি তিনি কিন্তু বামপন্থী রাজনীতির সঙ্গে আচ্ছন্ন। শুধু তাই নয়, তিনি বাংলার কমিউনিস্ট আন্দোলনের একদম প্রথম সারির মহিলা নেত্রীদের অন্যতম, যার একটা মহৎ হৃদয় ছিল। সে আক্ষরিক অর্থে শ্রমিক বস্তিতে গিয়ে কাজ করেছে। এবং তারপর যখন আগস্ট আন্দোলন হলো, যখন পার্টির অনুশাসনে যাকে জনযুদ্ধ নীতি মেনে নিতে হচ্ছে, মণিকুন্তলা সে তার বইতে বলছে আমি কিন্তু মানতে পারছি না, তার মন চাইছে আগস্ট আন্দোলনের সঙ্গে যেতে, কিন্তু পার্টির অনুশাসন তাকে মানতে হচ্ছে। তার হৃদয় কিন্তু মানে দ্বিধাবিভক্ত। একজন অত্যন্ত মহৎ হৃদয়ের মহিলা, যার কাছে দেশের ডাক আর পার্টির ডাকের মধ্যে তিনি ছিন্ন ভিন্ন হয়ে যাচ্ছেন, এটাও বোধহয় বললে ভালো হয়। আর স্যারকে শুধু একটাই প্রশ্ন, আমার মানে জানা কোনো প্রশ্ন নয়, সেটা হচ্ছে এই যে বিপ্লবীদের খাদ্যাভ্যাস বা রাজবন্দীদের খাদ্যাভ্যাস নিয়ে এত তথ্য জানতে পারলাম, যাকে আমরা পলিটিক্যাল প্রিজনার বলি বা রাজনৈতিক বন্দী বলি, এটা কবে থেকে শুরু হলো, যবে থেকে আলাদা একটা চার্ট তৈরি হলো? আমরা সবাই জানি যাদেরকে রাজনৈতিক বন্দী বলা হতো তাদের আলাদা একটা খাবারের ব্যবস্থা হতো, অন্যান্য ব্যবস্থা তো হতো বটেই, যেমন মানে কমলা দাশগুপ্ত বলতে তাকে মানে বছরে 6টা মানে শাড়ি দেওয়া হতো, মানে গন্ধ তেল দেওয়া হতো, খাবার ব্যবস্থা একটা আলাদা ছিল। এবং সম্ভবত রাজনৈতিক বন্দীরা অনেক সময় নিজেরা রান্না করেও খেত। সেই সুব্যবস্থার চলটা কবে থেকে হতো?
দেখুন, এখনো অবধি আমি এটার কোনো ডিরেক্ট ডকুমেন্ট পাইনি, আমি আর্কাইভ আর একটু দেখতে হবে। আমি জাস্ট শুরু করেছি, এই এরিয়াটা আমার ঠিক স্বচ্ছন্দের জায়গা নয়, আমি জাস্ট শুরু করেছি, এখনো অবধি আমি সেইভাবে দেখতে পাইনি। তবে হ্যাঁ, যেটুকু জানা গেছে যে রাজনৈতিক বন্দী বা একজন চোর বা যাকে চুরি করেছে ধরা পড়ছে, এবং এদের খাদ্যাভ্যাস বা যারা খুব বড় রকমের বিপ্লবী যাদেরকে ওইভাবে করা হয়, এক্সক্লুড করে রাখা হচ্ছে, তাদের খাদ্যাভ্যাসগুলোর মধ্যে একটা পার্থক্য ছিল। খাদ্যাভ্যাস এটাকে ঠিক বলা চলে না, মানে খাদ্যাভ্যাস আমরা তাকেই বলি যেটা আমার অভ্যাসের মধ্যে, যেটা আমার চয়েস রয়েছে। এখানে কিন্তু কোনো চয়েস নেই। চয়েসটা তখনই আসছে, যেমন ওই বারিন ঘোষরা বলছেন যে আমরা রান্না করতে পারছি, যখন ওইখানে আসছে তখনও কিন্তু আমি ঠিক চয়েস বলতে পারি না, কারণ ওইখানে যেটুকু মানে একজনের আত্মকথাতে আছে, উপেন্দ্র বোধহয় ত্রৈলোক্যনাথের বোধহয় আত্মকথাতে আছে, যে উনি বলছেন যে ওনাদের খুব শরীর খারাপ হচ্ছে সবার জেলের ভেতরে, একের পর এক শরীর খারাপ হচ্ছে, তখন জেলের ডাক্তার এসে বলছে আমাদের বাগানে এত মোচা হচ্ছে, ইঁচড় হচ্ছে, তোমরা এগুলো না খেয়ে তোমরা এইসব কেন খাচ্ছ, নিজেরা রান্না করলেই তো পারো। তাতে উনি খুব করে বললেন যে না, মানে ইঁচড় মোচা সবই হচ্ছে, শাকও হচ্ছে, কিন্তু আসলে ইঁচড়ের ছাল, মোচার চামড়া আর শাকের ইয়েগুলি ছাড়া, মানে শাকের গোড়াগুলি ছাড়া বাকিগুলি যেন কিভাবে পথ হারিয়ে অন্য দিকে চলে যাচ্ছে। এখন এটা উনি কোট করছেন। এখন এইটাকে ঠিক আমি খাদ্যাভ্যাস বলতে পারি, এটাকে আমরা এটাই বলতে পারি যে যেটুকু পেয়েছে সেটাকে নিয়ে ম্যানেজ করেছে। কিন্তু ওই খাদ্যাভ্যাসটা হচ্ছে জেলের বাইরে, জেলের ভেতরে একটা মানে জেলের ভেতরকে আমি জাস্ট দেখার চেষ্টা করছি কীভাবে রিমেম্বার, মানে তারা ভেবেছে বা তারা কীভাবে চিন্তা করেছে জেলের ভেতরটাকে, এটুকুই দেখার বিষয়। এটাকে যদি আমরা বলে দিই যেটা বাঙালির খাদ্যাভ্যাসের অংশ, তাহলে বোধহয় এটা ঠিক হবে না, কারণ এটা ঠিক বাঙালি খাদ্যাভ্যাসের অংশ নয়। এটা ব্রিটিশরা যেভাবে বাঙালিদের খাদ্য খাওয়াতে চেয়েছে তার একটা ম্যানিপুলেটেড ভার্সন অফ মানে বেঙ্গলি ফুড হ্যাবিট রিফ্লেক্টেড ইন দিস মেমোয়ার্স। এটাকে ঠিক বেঙ্গলি ফুড হ্যাবিট বলাটা বোধহয় ঠিক হবে না।
আমরা কি এবার করব? সো জাস্ট লাস্ট কমেন্ট, ফ্যাসিনেটিং, থ্যাংক ইউ আপনাদের দুজনকে, জাস্ট রিয়েলি ওয়ান্ডারফুল। আমার জাস্ট মনে পড়লো তনিকাদির লেখা অ্যাবাউট উইমেন রেভলিউশনারিজ, ওখানে উনি বলার চেষ্টা করছিলেন যে এডুকেশন, আপনি যেটা বললেন, হোয়াট ইউ সেড, এডুকেশন enabled a certain kind of politics, so it enabled to come into the public sphere, but did it manage to change patriarchy or not? So that is a big question. And similar, so thing was concerned, reinforcements, so therefore to Shubhajit also, that jail life enabled the breaking of food taboos, but did it really change the caste system? So I mean, these are very big questions, and I think we still need to think about that, because so I think, thank you everyone, it was a wonderful session and we managed to learn so much. That was the best part of it, and it was so fascinating.
So we request with the last protocol of the day. Andrila, please come on dais, please. To felicitate both the distinguished speaker. Professor, we request you to felicitate Dr. Subhashish. Thank you, sir. Dr. Shubhajit. Dr. Gupta. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Trideep sir and all those faculty members, can you come for a group photo here? Dean sir, please come. Trideep sir.